Hello everyone, quick review today, this weekend for Father's Day, and a quick shout out to all the dads out there. I hope it was a great one for you, it was a fantastic one for me. I went and saw a movie with my daughters and my wife that proves when a company can just tell a simple, straightforward story, it is a hit. That movie was Inside Out 2, and I can confidently say it was a pretty great theater experience. Now, I do have some critiques of the overall film, and I will get to those, but they were very minor. I should also mention that I had a lot of trepidation going into this one. The first one had a very special place for me. As the dad of two girls, now 13 and 9, and as someone who grew up with two sisters, I have seen a lot of Disney animation over the years. I enjoyed almost all of the early Pixar offerings, and even prior to having children, would go see movies like WALL-E and Up just to see them. I said this to my daughter yesterday on the drive home, that I don't think we all quite understood how spoiled we were in terms of animated entertainment quality ranging from roughly the year 2000 to about 2018. In the years since, there has been an unfortunate dip in that quality when the current woke mindset and poor storytelling seem to overtake Disney telling simple, straightforward, entertaining stories. And to tie this into the original Inside Out, beyond its simple and easy to understand story about a young girl having to deal with more complex emotions, I had a personal reason for that film hitting me as hard as it did. Not to get too personal on a YouTube channel, but I saw the first Inside Out with my oldest daughter when she was only 5. I had just fought and lost a brutal custody battle in which I initially thought due to very strong evidence I was going to win, only to have that evidence thrown away by a new judge and be told that my daughters, 5 and under a year old at the time, were going to move 3 states away and I could only see them 1 weekend a month. So, Inside Out was the first movie I took my daughter to following that devastating blow. I was trying to focus on the positives and just have a good afternoon with my girl. Well, then Bing Bong happened. Some of you out there might already know where this is going, but when Bing Bong, the former imaginary friend of the little girl Riley whose head all of this takes place in, first shows up, I was mistakenly under the assumption that he would be a slightly antagonistic character. Not evil to the extent of, say, King Candy and Wreck-It Ralph, but along those same lines. A formerly important figure in Riley's world who might try to co-opt Joy's mission to get back to the control center for his own gains. Boy, was I wrong, and not at all ready for the blow to the chest that Pixar had in mind in that film. When the characters fall down into the memory dump, as I began to realize what Bing Bong was about to do, man, some emotions started. It's hard to describe now, but when the imaginary pink elephant man, it's an odd sentence, said,
"Take her to the moon for me, okay?"
my daughter was suddenly sitting next to a 220-pound man, ugly crying, as a wave of all of that emotional baggage crashed in. I covered it up, as all us tough guys do.
Oh my god. Are you gonna cry?
No, you're gonna cry.
And we finished the movie. And she has always loved it, so thankfully, nothing about that damaged her enjoyment of it. But it hit me in a very deep place that I am a little defensive of. So hearing that they were making a sequel to this movie, I was more than a little ready to hate it if I caught even a whiff of modern Disney agenda creeping in. Oh, and for those of you out there worried, don't worry on the custody thing. I moved to the state where my daughters lived the following summer, fought another brutal custody battle for causes I won't go into publicly, and have as much time with them as our unfortunately imbalanced legal parenting system could give me. We dads never stop fighting for our kids and what's right. Something I've learned from all those superheroes I keep talking about on my channel. So, getting to Inside Out 2, what did it do well? Well, first of all, the plot itself was a simple and straightforward story of achievement. I won't go into spoilers for this review and we'll keep it to the basics, but the setup is that the character of Riley, in whose mind we experienced all of these emotions, is 13, about to go on to high school, and due to her high level of skill at hockey has been invited, along with her 2 best friends, to a 3-day camp by the high school coach. Due to an event that happens early in the film that I won't spoil, Riley begins putting a lot of pressure on herself to perform well, not just for the coach, but for the older high school girls that she desperately wants to be accepted by. This coincides with Riley beginning puberty and a host of new emotions being introduced into the control room.
I'm anxiety. I'm one of Riley's new emotions, and we are just super jazzed to be here. Where can I put my stuff?
Mainly Anxiety, who, while not evil, is essentially the antagonist for the film. Her role being one of planning ahead for any dangers Riley might experience, essentially planning for the worst possible outcome in every situation. This leads to complications with Joy, and the main plot and conflict of the film ensue. First, for the positives. The voice cast is overall excellent, the standouts being Amy Poehler, who is still able to personify Joy and create a unique character who could easily become grating, but who she manages to always make endearing. Maya Hawke does a great job of making Anxiety seem believable and not evil, but simply misguided. Kensington Tallman does excellent work as Riley, capturing the full swing of emotions and making Riley a likable and realistic protagonist. Lisa Lapira is a great replacement for Mindy Kaling, as I was never really a fan of Kaling's shtick in the first film, and Lapira makes the character more a character with more agency in this film and her own personality.
What do you mean, we?
The only voice actor missed for me personally was Bill Hader as Fear.
All right, what are we watching?
I like Toby Hale a lot, and he isn't bad as Fear. I just kept hearing essentially Buster Bluth.
I'm a monster!
But for kids, that won't be an issue. Second, the animation is outstanding. It absolutely calls back to the old days of Pixar when every film tended to have its own visual style within the Pixar look. This one holds to that, with the Mindscape being a bright and colorful world full of unique visuals. Third, and most important, this film just tells a very easy to understand and straightforward story about a young girl trying to be accepted through athletic achievement. It does something I outlined in my video on how to make a profitable X-Men film. Check that one out if you're so inclined. It doesn't complicate the story with woke narratives or sexual politics. There is no awful subplot about there being a special girl on the team that Riley has a crush on. You can feel a couple of times like the writers were tempted to go in that direction, but they exercised that most important of skills for modern writers, restraint. And instead, they told a really successful story about a young girl struggling and succeeding at a very stressful point in her life. My standout scene in the film would be a moment near the end of the second act when Riley is trying to fall asleep, and the swirl of both negative and positive visions and images that can run through someone's mind is expressed in a very clever way. I thought that whole sequence was excellently done, and for an adult with all of my adult worries, sometimes I make myself switch mental tracks and start writing an alternate version of the Star Wars prequels or what a Todd McFarlane-inspired Spider-Man movie starring Andrew Garfield would have looked like, and usually fall off to a pretty good sleep. Again, the mind is a weird place, and this scene hit home for me. My final compliment here is going to be how the film tackles a panic attack. I thankfully have only ever experienced one of these once in my life, and I can't speak for everyone, but this and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish both nailed what it felt like for me. That being said, Hollywood writers, we've had 2 excellent renditions of this. Don't keep doing it. You likely won't equal these great examples, which are both story and character driven, and forcing it into stories will only bring diminishing returns. Now, for a couple of negatives. My first one is minor, but stuck out to me. Writers for these films maybe need to spend some more time around actual high school girls if they're going to write about them. I, thankfully, teach in an elementary school, but have to interact with the high school kids from time to time, and modern writers, especially at Disney, seem to write them all in the same somewhat cringe-inducing way. Again, it's a minor quibble, but it was a false note a few times in the story. The only real big criticism I have is that the plot is essentially the same as the first film. In broad strokes, another emotion is in conflict with Joy during a crisis point in Riley's life, and by the end of the film, Joy and that conflicting emotion must learn that they both have their place in Riley's internal makeup. But all of that taken into account, I had a delightful time watching this for my Father's Day afternoon with my family. The plot being derivative of the first film really did not damage my enjoyment of it, and by the end, it used that framework to tell its own important story that it felt like it had a good reason to tell. Now, for the target audience, my 13-year-old, who again was 5 when we saw the first movie, actually had the better time, I think, with it. She herself changed schools last year going into middle school, and although she is much happier at her new school, she still had to say goodbye to friends she had made, and that resonated with her. On the way home, she was drawing Anxiety and said that Ennui was her new favorite character.
No.
Go figure for a 13-year-old girl, right? But she thoroughly enjoyed the film overall. My 9-year-old definitely had fun with it, but I think it stopped there. She thought Anger was funny and likes Joy a lot, but I think the deeper story, while not lost on her, wasn't really something that resonated with her. But I have no doubt she will ask to watch the movie again when it comes out for home release. So yes, I would say this was a win for Disney. But more than that, this is a win for good storytelling. I wouldn't say this is a great film. It didn't hit me in the place things like the Lord of the Rings trilogy does. But it's a good and enjoyable film that honors and builds on the first film, it respects its audience, and it's under 2 hours. It holds to its narrative, it puts characters first, it has barely a whiff of agenda, and in not trying to preach to its audience, it tells a good story about an emotionally intelligent, active, and healthy young girl with a diverse group of friends, with the emphasis being on friendship and the joy of positive achievement. And by not making race, sexuality, or gender in any way a focus, it's actually able to just make Riley a character that my daughter can really enjoy and see herself in. That's why this movie is having a great run at the box office and will more than likely do very well on repeat viewing. I'll leave off this week by saying that this is the kind of storytelling I hope Hollywood gets back to. The theater experience and movies are not dead. That huge 90% audience that just wants good stories, we're still out here and ready to go buy a ticket. Put a good product out there, and we will happily go have that experience. And that's it for me this week. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. If you liked this video, please do any version of the things. Click around that screen wherever you'd like. Emphasis possibly on the like. And until next time, maximum effort.